I, Nelson Mandela, do hereby swear, oppose all that may harm the Republic.
The years after Mandela's presidency were supposed to be the time when democracy matured, when justice deepened, when promises became reality. Instead, South Africa entered a new and uncertain era. The dream of the Rainbow Nation began to fade under the weight of corruption, inequality, and disillusionment. The leaders who followed Mandela, Mbeki, Zuma, Ramaphosa, each carried the hopes of renewal, yet each faced the same problem: how to fix an economy never designed to serve the majority. Thabo Mbeki inherited a country still learning how to govern itself. He was intelligent, cautious, and deeply aware of South Africa's fragile global position. But his government continued to follow neoliberal economic policies that favored markets over people. Privatization expanded, and the influence of foreign corporations deepened. To global investors, South Africa was the model of a responsible democracy, open to trade, stable, and predictable. But to millions of ordinary South Africans, Mbeki's government looked distant, disconnected, and blind to the daily struggle for survival. Mbeki believed in what he called an African Renaissance, a vision where the continent would rise through self-reliance and knowledge. Yet, under his leadership, inequality grew. The benefits of growth were captured by a small elite. While GDP numbers improved, real life for the poor did not. It was during this time that HIV and AIDS ravaged communities. Millions of South Africans died because of government denial and slow response. Mbeki's refusal to accept the scientific reality of the epidemic became one of the darkest marks on his legacy. It revealed a government that spoke of freedom but failed to protect life itself. As economic frustration mounted, the nation's patience began to crumble. The people who had waited for decades started demanding more than promises. In the early 2000s, waves of strikes swept the country. Miners, teachers, nurses, and students all rose to demand better wages and living conditions. Townships erupted in protest against poor service delivery. South Africa's democracy was alive, but restless. The streets echoed with the same revolutionary songs that once fought apartheid, now directed at a new enemy: inequality. When Jacob Zuma took power in 2009, he promised to bring the government closer to the people. A man of the masses, raised in the struggle, he was seen as someone who understood the pain of the poor. His rise symbolized hope for a return to the values of the liberation movement. But what followed instead was a new chapter of betrayal. Zuma's presidency unleashed an era of corruption on a scale that shocked even his supporters. The dream of empowerment was replaced by the nightmare of state capture. Under Zuma, powerful business families like the Guptas allegedly controlled ministers, contracts, and even government appointments. Billions were stolen from state companies, while unemployment continued to rise. Ordinary South Africans paid the price as hospitals ran short of medicine, roads fell apart, and electricity blackouts became routine. Each scandal weakened the faith of the people in their democracy. For many, the line between freedom and exploitation had blurred beyond recognition. The story of state capture was more than just one man's corruption. It was the reflection of a system left untransformed. When economic power stays in the same hands, political power becomes a prize to be bought. Corruption thrives in the cracks of inequality. And when the poor have no voice, their silence becomes the foundation of someone else's wealth. Still, even in this chaos, hope found small places to grow. Investigative journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens fought back. Whistleblowers risked their lives to expose the truth. Judges stood firm against political pressure. Civil society refused to give up. South Africa's democracy bent, but it did not break. The very spirit that defeated apartheid rose again, this time to confront betrayal from within. But while corruption made headlines, a deeper crisis brewed quietly beneath the surface: economic stagnation. The country's growth slowed, industries declined, and the global financial crisis of 2008 hit hard. Mining, once the pride of South Africa's economy, began to collapse under lower prices and rising costs. Manufacturing shrank. Millions were left jobless. The government tried to attract investment through incentives and tax breaks, but few of those deals created sustainable jobs. The economy grew without reducing poverty. The anger of the poor turned inward. Xenophobia erupted in cities as locals blamed foreign African immigrants for taking jobs and opportunities. The violence was brutal, revealing how despair can easily become hatred. Instead of uniting the oppressed, poverty divided them. The dream of African solidarity cracked under the pressure of scarcity. In the same streets where people once fought side by side against apartheid, now neighbors turned against each other. The world looked on, puzzled. How could the nation that inspired the world's conscience now fall into such chaos? But those who understood history knew that this was the cost of unfinished liberation. When a system changes its symbols, but not its structure, inequality becomes the new apartheid, less visible, but equally cruel. Meanwhile, global powers returned to Africa with new faces. China offered loans and infrastructure. Western companies continued mining contracts. The United States promoted trade through programs like AGOA. South Africa joined the BRICS alliance, hoping for an alternative to Western dominance. But no matter where it turned, the same pattern repeated: foreign capital extracting value while local workers remained poor. The world called it partnership. Many South Africans called it neo-colonialism. Inside the country, frustration found new voices. Julius Malema and the economic freedom fighters rose as a radical force, demanding economic transformation, nationalization of mines, land expropriation, and an end to corruption. Their fiery speeches reignited revolutionary energy among the youth, the unemployed, and the forgotten. Whether loved or hated, the EFF forced the nation to confront the uncomfortable truth: democracy without justice is a lie. Universities became battlegrounds of a new awakening. The hashtag "Fees Must Fall" movement spread across campuses, demanding free education and decolonized learning. Students faced police bullets and tear gas, echoing the struggles of 1976. Their fight was not just for tuition, it was for dignity. It was a generation saying, "We are tired of inheriting promises that never came true." While these movements shook the streets, the government seemed paralyzed. Load shedding worsened, crime soared, and inequality reached record levels. The hope that once united South Africa began to fracture into cynicism. But even then, in the chaos, there was beauty. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers began documenting the pain and power of their people. The struggle turned into art, the anger into rhythm. South Africa's soul, wounded but unbroken, continued to speak through culture. The truth is, freedom is not a single moment. It is a lifelong process. South Africa achieved the first step, political liberation. But the second step, economic liberation, is the harder one. It means confronting power itself, not just the color of power. It means rewriting ownership, not just rewriting laws. And that fight is ongoing, fought not with guns this time, but with ideas, votes, and voices. Today, the numbers tell a painful story. More than half the population lives below the poverty line. Youth unemployment remains above 50%. The richest 10% of South Africans own more than 80% of the wealth. These are not statistics. They are evidence of betrayal. Behind every number is a child going to bed hungry, a graduate with no job, a mother carrying water for miles because infrastructure failed her. The promises of 1994 were not false. They were simply never fulfilled. In the rural heartlands, where apartheid spatial planning remains, entire communities survive without basic services. Schools lack teachers, hospitals lack medicine, and farms lie underused while millions crave land to cultivate. The tragedy is that South Africa has the resources, the talent, and the potential to prosper. What it lacks is justice in its foundation. And yet, amid all this, a new generation is rising, young, restless, and fearless. They are no longer waiting for the government to deliver miracles. They are creating their own futures through entrepreneurship, art, activism, and education. They are questioning everything: the past, the system, even their heroes. They know that freedom must evolve or it will die. The world's view of South Africa often freezes in time. Mandela smiling, the rainbow flag flying, the anthem of unity playing. But real freedom is not a photograph. It is a living struggle. The great betrayal of South Africa's freedom is not that apartheid ended. It's that the revolution was paused before its work was done. The chains were broken, but the system that forged them was left standing. Each generation must decide whether to live comfortably within that system or challenge it. And that choice will define South Africa's future. The betrayal can still be undone, but only through courage. Courage to reform the economy, to redistribute land, to punish corruption, and to rebuild faith in justice. South Africa's story is not finished. The fire of Soweto, the spirit of Sharpeville, the resilience of Robben Island, all still burn. The people who once faced tanks and tear gas will not surrender to hopelessness. The question is not whether South Africa can rise again. It's whether those in power will listen before it's too late. The world may have moved on, but history has a long memory. The same forces that once exploited South Africa's labor and minerals now exploit its economy through debt, trade, and dependency. The names have changed, but the chains remain. Yet, the people of South Africa have broken chains before. They can do it again. This is not just a South African story, it is a human story. It is about the cost of freedom and the courage to finish what others started. Every nation that has tasted colonialism and inequality sees itself reflected here. The betrayal of one is the warning to all that true freedom cannot be negotiated. It must be built, brick by brick, voice by voice, generation by generation.